Grand Plateau Glacier comes down out of the Fairweather Range into a big lake there, into Grand Plateau Lake. And Grand Plateau is a big glacier, you know, and the scenery there is, that's one of the few areas along the hike where you really have some scenery to look at. For a lot of the walk up the beach there, you got, you know, forest on one side and the ocean on the other, and you're not really looking at a lot of spectacular country. But when you come out of Grand Plateau Glacier on a clear day and have the Fairweather Range right there, you know, a couple miles away, it's pretty spectacular. Grand Plateau Glacier crawls out of a staggering warren of 3,000 to 9,000 foot mountains that run generally parallel to the coast north of Mount Fairweather, riven in all directions by a web of ice fields and glaciers that spans the area between Alaska, British Columbia, and the Yukon. Before the partitioning of the region into the territories of modern nations, and more recently into a cluster of national and provincial parks, the Tlingit knew and used the network of glaciers as travel corridors, moving back and forth between the coast and the interior, where they traded with the Champagne and Ishak bands of the First Nations and the Athabascan Chichon. In 1999, 3 sheep hunters, Mike Roche, Warren Ward, and Bill Hanlon, all from Nelson, BC, were 8 hours above their base camp, high in the peaks above the Tatsuchini River, when they made a remarkable discovery. They had already taken 2 big rams and were working their way along the edge of a glacier, searching for a third, when they saw something extraordinary, a piece of wood. Roche was a science teacher, Ward taught English, and Hanlon taught shop at the high school in Nelson, and all 3 had enough experience in the sterile environment of the glacial highlands to understand that wood of any sort was out of place. A bit farther on, they found another piece, and when they put the 2 pieces together, they formed what looked like a walking stick. Then they spotted a third piece, and this one had a hook carved in one end like an atlatl, a short throwing board used to increase the power of a hurled spear. That's when we began to realize we'd come across something really special, Roche said later. Ward used his binoculars to scan the area and quickly spotted a mitten and what looked like a pile of debris out on the glacier. Carefully working their way there, they found something that took their breath away. Wedged in a crevice were the frozen remains of an ancient hunter. Nearby lay a primitive knife with a bone handle and a leather sheath. Next to that was a cloak made of ground squirrel fur and what appeared to be a backpack of some sort. To their everlasting credit, they understood immediately the magnitude of their discovery and had the presence of mind to spend half an hour carefully marking the location on a map before making the decision to call off their hunt and head back to their base camp. The next morning they started walking out so they could report their find to archaeologists at the Beringia Museum, 100 miles away in Whitehorse in the Yukon Territory. They decided to take the knife and sheath along to prove their claim, although Ward later admitted that he'd been reluctant to remove anything, saying that he'd taught the curse of King Tut's tomb to his English students for 20 years, and since all of the people involved with that discovery died of unnatural causes, it made him a little uncomfortable to do so. As far as I know, no misfortune has befallen the 3 hunters since their discovery, but the excitement it caused was understandable. It was the first discovery of a human body frozen into a glacier in North America. 8 years earlier, a body found in a glacier straddling the border between Austria and Italy had turned out to be 5,300 years old, and people were wondering if this was North America's equivalent. 3 days later, a helicopter bearing a team of archaeologists and representatives of the Champagne and Ishak tribes, whose traditional territory included the area where the body had been found, flew into the site to confirm what was there. The next 3 days were spent carefully surveying and documenting the condition and location of artifacts associated with the body. Then the body was removed by a team of specialists after being prayed over by the Champagne and Ishak elders, who had given the name Kwadidan Chinchi, or long ago person found, to their recovered ancestor. What followed was a blending of traditional knowledge and modern forensic technology that allowed the story of Kwadidan Chinchi to unfold in a remarkable way. Within weeks, it had been determined that the warrior had been between 19 and 21 years old when he died. The initial radiocarbon dating indicated that he had died approximately 500 years ago. The examination of bone and tissue samples through stable isotope analysis and mass spectrometry showed that he had spent most of his life subsisting on a diet of seafood, which indicated that he had been born into one of the coastal bands that harvest salmon, halibut, and shellfish along the coast. Next, a chemical analysis of his hair showed that for several months prior to his death, he had not eaten seafood, but had instead been in the interior, where the native diet is based on moose and caribou. Pollen and spores from interior plants removed from his clothing confirmed this. Yet most amazing was what the contents of his digestive system revealed. There was partially digested beach asparagus or glasswort in his stomach, and meat from a crustacean, possibly shrimp. Beach asparagus is a common coastal plant known for its salty, crisp flavor. I've been hoping to find some along the trek to augment my diet of freeze-dried food.